Well, everyone, you made it. We're in the last week and we're almost ready for the holiday break. I don't know about you, but I wasn't really feeling very festive, but I'm starting to. So it's not even Thanksgiving yet, so I'm kind of doing this in advance, but it's actually a few days before Thanksgiving. So, but we're heading into our final week and I wanted to wrap everything up with you. And so this is going to be our last lecture. I'm not giving you any new content because, that's kind of pointless. But what I am going to do is we're going to wrap up the class and I'm going to give you some information that hopefully will help you do very well on your final exam. Now, some of you did great on the midterm exam. Some of you struggled in some areas. So if there were areas that you did struggle on the midterm, go back and review that material because you are going to see it again. I didn't develop a final exam guide for the simple reason that the way that I have it structured just kind of doesn't make any sense, and all of the questions are essay of some sort. So if I point you too much in one direction, I'm basically giving you the answer to the question, and it doesn't really help because they're very wide questions. I expect you to sort of give me the answer. So let me give you some for instance in what I'm talking about. So there's 3 sections. The first one is a shorter answer essay question. And when I say shorter answer, I still don't mean one sentence. It's still going to be maybe a paragraph would probably answer it. And these are all going to be worth 2 points. And there's 1, 2, let's see how many of these I have. I think there's like 10. There's 11. So there's 11 of the shorter answer ones, which you can certainly answer in a couple of well-written sentences. And there's a combination of, I start all the essays with like, analyze the importance of, or discuss how this impacted this, or I give you a scenario and I give you sort of an ethical dilemma. A lot of the similar to the essays that I had on the midterm, but like more involved. So I'll say like, we discussed this. How does this then impact or whatever? So for all of the 2-point questions, I want you to always keep in mind the point value when you're answering your question in terms of how much information you should be giving me, because that's how I'm going to grade you. So for the 2-point questions, I'm generally looking for 2 parts to your answer. Either if I ask you to define something, then one of those points is going to be that you actually gave me the definition of what I'm asking for. And then the second part is going to be like, if I say like define and then tell me how this impacted whatever, then I'm looking for you to tell me how it impacted at least one area and that you gave me the definition. If I'm asking you to compare and contrast 2 things, I'm looking for a pro and a con, and those would be your 2 points. So you don't need to give me a million reasons. If I say pro and con and it's a 2-point question, 1 of each should suffice. But as long as you're answering the different parts of the question, you'll get full credit. So even though I realize that some of these you could probably give me a much lengthier answer, you can give me a valid answer, and that will be fine. I don't expect you to give me a page for each one because you'll be there all day. Okay, so then the next section are longer answer essays, and there's 4 of those questions. And again, because they're 4 points, I'm asking for more information and I expect you to give me more information. So if it's a 4-point question, there's going to be 4 things that I'm going to be looking for. Either a couple of different things that you're comparing and contrasting. So if it's hey, tell me about this versus this, then I expect like 2 facts versus 2 facts, and that's your 4 points. Or if I like talk about how this impacts this, then I want you to give me several examples that would add up to 4 points, like your definition and then 3 examples of how that might happen. So just that'll give you kind of a framework of, it doesn't have to be exactly that, but that's sort of what I'm looking for. They're all of the essay questions are, like I said, much wider. It's not very specific. Like I don't specifically say like, tell me about this act in the Rehab Act of 73. But what I might say is, given this scenario, what laws would protect this person, or what things are applicable in this situation. And I expect that you're going to say, well, for this situation, then that would be the ADA, or, employment versus public, or whatever. But again, not new information, nothing new that we haven't already discussed, but go back and review those PowerPoints, and maybe things that if you didn't quite get it on the midterm or lost points, review it to make sure that you understand that material. We talk a little, what, if it helps, what I generally did was I took a couple questions from every unit that we did. So there's like 1 or 2 questions from every week. So if you go through each thing, and you review your notes, review the PowerPoints that I did, and review the lectures and any key things that we kind of honed in on, or things that were brought up in the discussion posts that seemed to be kind of key and relevant. Obviously not every little detail, but then you should be pretty well covered. And then the last part, I do have 2 questions that are each worth 2 points, and those are purely extra credit. So they're on the easier side, and as long as you answer them and it's a well-written answer, you'll get 4 potentially extra credit points that will be in addition to whatever you get on the rest of the exam. And I will be, like I said, I'm going to be looking for very thoughtful, detailed answers on the exam to see whether or not you really do have a grasp of the material. So the extra credit might help offset that a little bit. And if you're a rock star and you really know all the material well, then you might actually get more than 100. So I do have the extra credit that can go above 100. So it's possible to score more than 100 on the test. So if you end up getting 100 plus the extra credit points, then it'll be extra credit towards your total grade for this class, which that's not a bad thing either. If I do have this in the details, but just so you know, I very rarely time any of my exams. So you're not timed. You can take the time. You need to be thoughtful. However, you do need to use Proctor Free. I do proctor all of the exams, and there is a link, just like I did with the midterm, that if you need to test Proctor Free and kind of do a practice run to make sure that it's working properly for you, I encourage you to do that. I strongly encourage you to do that earlier in the week. So while there isn't a time limit for the exam, you cannot leave and re-enter. And Proctor Free also won't let you walk away from your computer. So it is not open book, it's not open note, you can't be looking up answers. You need to sit down and take it when you have time. So make sure that you're ready to take the exam. Take it when you don't have any distractions, where you can focus and you're not going to be interrupted and things like that. And then, like I said, you have the time that you need to finish it. Take your time, give really thoughtful answers, and do what you have to do. And then you should be good to go. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because in this class too, and especially given the book that we read and things like that, like not all of the answers are black and white, A lot of it is kind of talking about concepts of like ableism and society and how people think about things. And there are different perspectives and different ways that people do look at things. So I recognize that not all of them are the same. And it doesn't even mean necessarily that my views are right, nor are yours. But I think that if we are being mindful of the work that we're doing and just aware that there are other perspectives out there and what those might be and how that impacts other people, I think that we're more than halfway there in terms of being a good ally in this work and working with the people that want to work with us. So I'm also curious, there's a few last minute things in week 7 that are easy assignments, easy points really, as long as you're giving me a thoughtful answer, which is just like telling me about the course. I always like to get everyone's feedback about, because as I mentioned before, I make changes every time I teach a class, and I try to improve things and make it better and make more sense and whatever. So I always like to see what things stick out to you as a student to say, oh, because what I think is important, and then like a student might say, well, oh, I really focused in on this thing, and I'm like, oh, I hadn't even thought about that. So I like to hear what you all have to say, and I take that into consideration, and I always do incorporate that into the next time I teach this class. So I appreciate all of your input. This is the first time that I've taught this class, like heavily focused in the discussion forums as well. I actually have liked it. To be perfectly honest, I have always kind of struggled with the asynchronous thing to some extent, because it is a challenge as an instructor to try to, like, how do I get everyone to engage with one another? And the discussion forums, I feel like this is the closest that I've gotten to like having an authentic classroom environment without having an actual all of us together in a classroom. That being said, it was a little bit of a challenge for me because there's a lot of you and there's only one of me and there's a lot of posts. So trying to keep up on all of the classes that I teach and all of the posts that are generated, I simply can't answer every single one of them, but I do read them. And so if there's a question that pops up and, needed an answer, I did my best to respond. I'm glad those of you feel comfortable enough to email, just in case something got lost in the shuffle. But overall, I think it went well. I kind of like the format, and I think I might keep it going forward. But I'm curious what all of you think too. I'm always open to suggestions. And I really appreciate all your hard work and your thinking about this, and look forward to everything that everyone's going to be doing in the future. If any of you, if you're moving on to classes that don't involve me, then I wish you all the best. I always encourage all of my students to stay connected with me on LinkedIn if don't have the privilege of teaching you again in another course. But I have a feeling I'm probably going to see some more of you because I have a pretty full course load in the spring. And so unless you're done, you're probably going to see me again very, very soon, at least in one class or another. So anyway, I hope you have a wonderful and blessed holiday season. If you need anything before we wrap this class up, by all means, please let me know, and take care.